Hello and welcome to Word Power, conversations about reclaiming the voices of the feminine. Today, we are having a conversation with Cheryl Prince. Welcome, Cheryl.
Hello. Good to be here today.
Yes, great to have you. So, Cheryl is a writer, an actress, a healer, a 5D theater maker, a rebel witch, and a spiritual activist. Wow. So, and at the moment she's writing a trilogy of plays and spiritual plays, because she's channeling these plays through her soul story. And she aims to awaken people's soul wisdom through this sacred act of storytelling. And I feel this is such a wonderful thing that you are doing. So thank you and welcome once again.
Thank you. And it was a joy to hear it because I've only got to this stage now where I've articulated what I was doing with words, because it's like you don't start out thinking that you're a 5D theatre maker or channeling soul stories. I started out like many people that go into the path of writing and what I believe bringing out their soul stories by not knowing what the hell I was doing, being absolutely clueless and just going, how do I write? But the one thing that I did have is I knew how to write poetry. Poetry would just come to me in the night. It would come to me as I walked. It would come to me in the forest. It would come to me in the woods, and it would just literally just be downloaded or channeled through me so easily. But I didn't know how to do anything more with words. I didn't know how to write bigger stories. And I certainly wouldn't have wanted to know back then that I was going to write such epic, big, I mean, I write stories about my past lives, future lives, different dimensions, very multi-dimensional, kind of supernatural, magical realism. So it's quite, it was quite ambitious for someone that's not trained as a writer. And that didn't know the tools. I've been learning a lot of techniques along the way. But I guess I want to say, because this is a word summit and it's for people that love and enjoy and embrace words, that actually I've found through channeling, and every artist, writer, creative channels, every one of them does. They just don't know that they're doing it. And that's what I want to remind it, that we have this program in society that says, oh, there's genius out there, genius, it's just born with genius. If they were born with genius, then it's because they'd practiced it in a life before and come back with it. That's my total conviction and belief. But also that your genius is your passion and your want, and it will come through you. But that beyond that if you have a love for words, it will keep you on this journey. It will keep you at it. And why I say that everyone can sort of channel is because I've spoken to a lot of artists and I've spoken to a lot of healers because of my background being crossed over. And everyone says about that state of just getting into that no state where time doesn't exist anymore and you're just in the flow, and it feels like something magical and big is happening to you, and you're just is coming through you. It's way bigger than you. And there's so many artists that talk about this state, like Britt Marling, who wrote the OA, who I'm a big fan of, actress and writer. The big scenes in her series were through her dream state. She dreamt them or woke up and wrote them down. George Lucas went to a medium and channeled Star Wars with a medium. You know, you don't hear about this enough. Yes. It's like people are using these kind of spiritual channeling techniques. If they want to call them a different name, you know, I call it channeling, but some other it might go, oh, just it's flow state, or I'm in the creative zone. So I wanted to bring that in straight away, that people have this power to channel their words. And I believe it's a real sacred act to do it. But I didn't used to, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even been able to have this conversation. I would have just gone, I don't know how to do anything. So I guess I speak mostly for people like me that think they don't know how to, and that they love words or they love stories, but they just don't think they can.
Yeah. So actually, yes, what we are doing here is speaking to the ones who are in love with words, but at the same time feel they are stuck somewhere in their self-expression and in the way they can speak in their true voice and using their soul wisdom as well. So basically, we like to say, oh, I am connected to the muse, or I am inspired by the muse, or whatever, but that's exactly what you have been describing so well for us now, that all of us have this potential and this possibility inside of our own beautiful selves. So
Yes.
yes. So I would like to ask you, first of all, what is 5D theater? And how does word power unfold in 5D theater making, in your theater making?
Amazing. Great question. So 5D theatre was something I set up, and it was only like a few months ago that I actually went, no, this is my business and the way I create theatre. The 5D concept is the idea that we're more than this reality, this 3D world that we can see, touch, smell. Is the idea that we are spirit in matter, in body. So to access a higher state, I believe that we've lived in societies, not all societies, you know, it depends where you live, but the Western culture of that soul isn't talked about enough. We're not taught that we have souls. So my idea for setting up 5D theatre, after being trained in like shamanic practices and bringing in a shamanic practice, was that we have one foot in this world and another foot in a higher dimension. I speak and channel and work with spirit as a healer, and my love and my urge was to blend both practices and bring in a 5D theatre, which was not me acting as a writer and actress over here and a healer in a business over here. It was like, how can I bring in the healing power of story? And my aim with 5D theatre is to bring about sacred storytelling that we used to do. You know, the shamans used to tell us stories around the fire to make us bigger and take us through the transitional phases of, you know, marriage, death, new puberty, all of that, that actually we needed to learn something. And I got to feeling from TV, from the industry, the acting industry that I was working in, that there weren't the shamanic storytellers out there. There weren't the druids or the temple art spaces that we used to have. And I wanted to bring that change into this new dimension. So that's 5D theatre. And
wow.
Your second question was about how was sacred word in 5D theatre?
Basically, how do you know, the power of words comes through and flows through the practice of 5D theatre?
So yeah, words have taken me on a huge journey, and I don't suppose it's going to stop because I thought I was only writing one play. That was before I set up the 5D theatre, and then it turned into 2 plays, and it's 3 plays, and I'm currently writing the second, having just done a reading for the first one. But I will say, so Awaken, the first play, was about me working out what a witch was through my own past life of what had happened to me. And when I first approached the word witch, I hated it. I was like, there was even people that were telling me at the time, you're a witch. And I was like, no, I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not. I didn't like the word. It gave me the heebie-jeebies, like it does a lot of people.
I can relate.
Yeah. I mean,
I felt the same.
It's like, oh, and I used to say to people, I'm not. And, you know, it made me think of old and haggard. And I didn't even know before I started to write about the play and reclaim the word and the power that's in the word witch. Now, for those that don't know, the word witch originates from like wick and weed, the 2 words together, which means like sorceress or to know. No. And then they fuse together, which is interesting because it's the same word, cunning folk, who were the healers, and they call them white witches of the 17th century. Cunning folk means to know, but now to say the word cunning, you think devious.
Yes. Yes.
So you've got a cunning folk that was working in the 17th century as witches, and you've got witches. Both the origin of the name is to know. And I'm a healer today who works with claircognizance, which is to know. A sixth sense people don't often, relate to that much, but it means just to know. So yeah. I can just know something about people, and I don't know how I know, I just know. So what happened to me, and it happened in the first play, I'll get on to the second, because the word power that happened in the second play was like, oh my God, I wasn't ready to go into that. But in the first one, it was the power of reclaiming who we are, because it was a journey for me to go, oh, I am the knowing one, I am the witch. And to distance myself from those words, I was just giving my power away. Yeah. And now it's like, oh no, I take my power back. So that was a huge journey with words. And I have to say, the reason that I wrote a play in the first place is because somebody cut my poem in my other theatre company I'm with. I had this beautiful poem and they cut it. They were like, oh, it doesn't really fit in. And I remember thinking, these words are so precious. I'm going to write my own, and no one can cut the words.
Exactly.
Yes. So there's something so empowering in actually writing. But then it came, the second play is a very anti a dark agenda that I feel that's going on in the world, that we're sort of in a mind control system that isn't about power to the people, it's about power over the mind and technology. And then I really learned more about words and the power in knowing the original meaning of words. For example, government, mind control, is the Latin translation. So you might want to know that about that's what the government was set up for, to control your mind. And stuff like what, a lot of people bandy about conspiracy theory, the word conspiracy is made up by the CIA. So by the time I was doing my second play, and on the first play, because I'm dyslexic, I sometimes don't always know what words mean, but I love words. So I'd always have a dictionary and I'd look up and I'd be like, I'd sort of channel this word and wouldn't know what it meant. And I'd look it up and go, oh, wow, I now have this new word. And now what I'm doing with my second play, which I think is even more powerful, is looking into the origins of words and going, I don't want to use that word anymore. Or I'm not going to get sold by the lie of that word, because I know the origin meaning, which is a bit of the same about the witch, but flipped. Yeah. So words have that much power that they control populations, but they also heal people.
Yes.
What I was saying about the witch. So do I think words have power, and am I excited about using them in 5D theatre? Hell yes. But there's like the dark and the light.
And the light, yeah. Yes, exactly. And being aware of both sides is so key to healing self and healing our relations as well, our relationships and the context we live in, the way we live in, because the way we manage to envision again a new style for us, a new lifestyle, comes also from reclaiming our word powers and being aware of how powerful our words, when they are intentional, how powerful they can be. So I'm blown away by what you are sharing and by your work as well, because it really is powerful. I remember watching your first play and feeling like, ooh, yes, so beautiful. And so I want to ask you some more questions about the theme of word power, because really it's so important to tune into this. So let's say you commented on knowing the origins of the words and how that is important, and specifically the word which is connected to know and so on. So when it comes to your own personal experience as applied to your own life, word which is
the wisdom keeper.
the wisdom keeper.
Absolute wisdom keeper. As soon as I really understood who she was, she's like the natural way of being with the earth, the pure medicine woman in the way that she'll, you know, the herbalist that understood the trees and the nourishment and the spirit and the light and the very organic matter, and the one that knows. And I'll yeah, I mean, my dad's not very well at the moment, and he said to me, "Oh God, you're a right witch, aren't you?" Like, not even, you know, thinking about it. But I actually think that's such a blessing in the way, because I have to keep coming back to that practice of that word witch. And what does that mean? That means I have to keep going, oh, I know. So step back into the self and go, oh, okay, I do know. And when fear takes over, it's like, no, what's the knowing, the gnosis? What's the know? So I'm so grateful that I don't take the word witch lightly, but I am still on a bit of a spiritual revolution to change the word. The dictionary still has that vile, you know, it basically says that they're hags and they're evil.
Exactly. And it's still part of the mind control game we were speaking about before. So, and when we have the power of the story, sacred power of story, then we can counteract, I think.
Yes. And I so wanted to speak into that. So I'm so glad you brought that up about this, because I was going to talk about the origin story, and that is the sacred words that are gifted. You know, I always think of, I'm not Christian, but Jesus saying, first there was the word, you know, that's how powerful it is. I was like, wow, what was he teaching about there?
Exactly. And that has been twisted as well.
Oh,
so you see, it's always there.
Yeah, I mean, don't even get me started, because Mary Magdalene has got a lot to say about what's been twisted. But that is literally why I'm writing my trilogy from my own soul's lineage, because story has such power in it. Words have such power that they've taught us how to be over the ages. And actually, if we now recreate these whole new words and stories about what the world could be like going forward, and even going back and what it originally was, then we're creating a whole new origin story for ourselves. And how powerful would that be, to be taught in schools, to be taught in circles, to be taught in people, that actually maybe you didn't come from that many years ago, maybe it's older, and maybe we didn't, you know, maybe we had more knowledge way back at the start, and that we've been programmed to think that we don't. And I think that's why I feel like there's a movement of storytellers, sacred storytellers, that are going, I'm going to write these new magical stories and start.
Help people remember where we come from, basically.
Remember the true origin story, and then you'll remember your own power and your own gnosis through doing that. Because I'm so grateful for all of the storytellers, and most of mine came through healers, not artists, which is a real shame that I couldn't look to the industry. Most of mine came through healers, and now I'm hoping it kind of marries, that there's more.
Yes, you know, I think we bought into the lie that art is only for entertainment purposes. That's why that's one of the problems we need to address, because art and story are sacred, of course, and they started out because people were really expressing a spiritual longing, their own spiritual quest, or their own spiritual experience. And okay, yes, they were having fun while doing it, but that doesn't take anything from it. Yeah. So it's,
that's a really good point.
Yeah. Thank you. I really love this conversation, and I think, you know, we need to really address and think about these issues, because so often we don't. We just, you know, we buy into many lies, unwittingly, of course. But, you know, that's all biopower that we need to address and to work through and to change, basically, to our own benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do believe that we're moving into that time, and I think that's why I kind of sort of set myself forward as a spiritual activist and rebel witch, because it's not about being passive right now. It's not about being like accepting. It's about challenging the status quo everywhere, and it's for everyone to do and just go, you know, how am I, you know, what words am I taking in and that aren't mine, and what ways, because even though it looks on the outside that we're kind of in a movement that's fairer and more diplomatic and more correct, I think we're still under quite a lot of brainwashing, really, because we're still being like divided in different ways. The webs are still there. So it's actually like you can't fight with the sacred word, the one that comes out of your soul or your flow and your muse. You know, that story, that word is where the powerful is, because it's not part of the program out there.
Yeah.
And
it's
that's
the power of each of us, each one of us, basically, to reclaim those words, and which express really our own essences. And how we live in the world can happen also through articulating and through really taking back and taking out our words, our real words, our authentic words. Yes. And it's not always easy, of course. It's not.
God,
but
no. It's so sometimes easier to stay quiet and not challenge things, but then, you know, you think about the beautiful words of someone, you know, like saying, I had a dream and someday we'll get there, you know, Martin, you know, the oracles that we have, those people that bring the sacred word forward, are sometimes not in the places we think. And I have a modern day love of someone like Russell Brand, who's bringing out his content despite people going, what? And being like, he is a shamanic storyteller. That's what he's doing. He's bringing out a truth to raise and awaken a collective. So it's coming in all different ways. Yeah, God, I'm so excited about words now. I hadn't thought about it this deep, and now I'm like, words are everything.
Yes, I mean, it contains a lot, and also, actually, it's creativity with words is not meant to be the linear project of modernity, in the sense that we think always straight on, logically, and with words we can paint images, and we can also give tangibility to emotions and feelings. And so we really go on a spiral-like, or many spiral-like trips, let's say.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because I think we're also often taught a very sort of masculine dominated, energetically I'm talking about, way of writing, and you know, and anything. I mean, that's why writing and the arts aren't heralded that high in our society, unfortunately, because it's more of a feminine quality. But we are taught to, you know, that you have to learn about this, and this is the way to write, and this is the way to do. And I have had to unpick that as a writer so much. And I go into doing a shamanic journey and a meditation to find my words, which is why I shared the meditation about a sacred storyteller. And I do different healing practices just to channel and open me up to words, because it's not really a left brain approach.
Yeah.
But I did find when I married like the structure and the character search and learning a technique with the flow of bringing stuff in, it was a really great way to write and to produce work in flow state. So I'm just bringing that in, because often people don't know about marrying both energies when they work.
Sure, yes. And so I wonder whether you can tell us something more about how really you reclaim your soul wisdom through writing your work. And I wonder whether you can share a little practice with our listeners, like something they can really put in practice by themselves, basically.
Yes, absolutely. So I use quite, because of what my stories are about my own past lives. I use all my past life regressions. So I went to so it happened accidentally to me. When I was training as a healer, I saw my past life being killed as a witch, and then that seeded the first play. And then as I went on, I started to still see healers, and I was channeling ancient Egyptian times, which I'm writing about. A channel all different lifetimes of a starseed consciousness. I've got a lot of material there. And I think even if that's not how you want to approach your own work, I think what it does is it opens up to the fact that we are so much more than this person. So actually think about all the different dimensions that you can tap into. So some people that aren't sort of soul-based or spiritually inclined still use these practices and go, oh my God, I'll see them. I was this king in this other world. And it's like, okay, open up your world. It doesn't have to be your belief system. But so I use those kind of healing practices to find that. And then what I found out on my way is I got to know my own soul stories. I got deeper and deeper in. And not only that, I got to reclaim like gifts from other lifetimes that I wasn't necessarily using and I didn't know. And that's why I think it's so powerful for people to tap into their own soul story. So that's why I do soul wisdom regressions with people, but a simple practice that you can use, and I have this on my channel, is a shamanic drumming session. And there's an 8-minute one and a 14-minute one, and I think they've got notes on it with how to do a shamanic journey if you don't know about going through a portal, coming through the other side. And what the drum does, so it's a simple practice, is it changes the brainwave state.
Yes.
So if you were like me back at the start, I think, couldn't turn the brain off. I'm great at meditating and channeling now, but it took 5 years of working on this skill set. But at the start, I used shamanic drums to silence all that. And the drum would just put me into that deeper consciousness, the creative flow state, the subconscious. For me, it was a spiritual state, but for people, it's anything. So to just use those drumming practices with one intention, say, show me a word, or show me a scene, or let me, whatever you're trying to do, put the drum on and ask one question, go through the portal, come out the other side, and you will find you go straight into a whole, I can even use it when it's like, show me what I need to heal. But, on my story, it would be like, can you show me more about my character that I don't know? Mm-hmm. Put the drumming journey and I come out the other side and I've got much more information. So I recommend using that because it's a great tool that anybody can use, whatever your belief system is, because it puts you in that, I can't even remember what brain state it is, but it's that relaxed kind of.
I think it's alpha.
I wonder,
state. I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So yeah, my YouTube is just Cheryl Prince, and it's called Shamanic Drumming, and there's 2 on there.
Yeah. And there will be a link on the page, so listeners can really contact you and receive your gifts. And speaking of gifts, of course, I want to ask you about your own free gifts for our listeners.
Yes. So in the spirit of 5D theatre, I recorded something about getting in touch with the sacred storytellers of old. Now, I've done this through my soul wisdom sessions on myself, that I've lived in the temple arts as an oracle priestess. I've walked the land as a druid. I had my Akashic records read, and that came out. And I've clearly been shamanic because of my shamanic storytelling wanting to come through. So I kind of put these 3 sort of lifestyles in a meditation practice so that anyone else could go into their own sacred story ability. And once again, even if that's not your belief system about going into your soul's consciousness, it's creating the world where we lived, where storytelling was sacred, that words were sacred. And once you journey there, you'll have a bit of a different approach towards your own stories and your own words, because once you realize it's this sacred act, it makes it much easier to turn up and do it with love and soul and passion.
Yes.
So this guided journey takes you to times where it was much, it was a revered act of, you know, honored in society, which unfortunately we're kind of balancing out. When 5D theatre really has its day, the sacred storytelling fully be back and integrated.
Yes.
We're getting there.
Yes, we are working towards that. Yes.
We're on that journey.
Yes. And also I think, you know, when we recover the sense that we are multi-dimensional beings, that we are, yes, body, yes, mind and soul and spirit too, then we can really see ourselves from a much higher or broader perspective, and we can go much deeper into ourselves and into the world, basically, in the consciousness of all that is. So
yeah, and I wish I'd known that at the start. I wish, you know, I wished I had a me now to tell myself, and it probably was on some consciousness, but that actually using all these spiritual techniques in your writing work and to channel your words and to know this now would have made it a lot more easier, because I didn't start out speaking like this. I start out like lost, not knowing what I'm doing and being a very human consciousness person. I didn't tap into souls or spirits at the time. I just felt very alone trying to create something bigger than me. And I think that's,
which is again the myth of the lonely artist in a garret, basically. And that's another lie which has been put up for, you know, to disempower people who want to create, and to, because either you are a genius and you suffer loneliness and poverty and all that, or you accept normal life, so-called normal life, and get on with it. Basically, that's what they have been telling us for centuries. And of course, this is not what it is meant to be, because creativity is sacred. It's sacred in the moment we really are present, are creating with all of ourselves, body, mind, soul, spirit. All of us is in the moment, is in the endeavor of creating. And when we do that, we align. And of course, all these lies, all these labels, all this chit chat or whatever disappears, because we really feel. Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
So I would like, I would like to ask you to, you know, to conclude this conversation with a final nugget of wisdom for the people who don't think necessarily of themselves as writers, but still they think or they feel that words are important. So what would you say to somebody who is not or doesn't want to be a writer necessarily, but who is attuned or wants to attune to world power? And how this is, in a way, an expression of feminine, of the feminine, of the actually, I now think, yes, it's an expression of the feminine, but it's also bringing balance between, you know, the masculine and the feminine. So, yes, just your take on this.
Yeah. So I think firstly, I'd start with the fact that we're all storytellers, even if you're not writing a book or you're not writing a play like I am. We all tell stories. We all love storytellers, and that can be in the way that, you know, if you have your own business, to tell a story about yourself, you need to write copy. You know, in every walk of life, stories are really important. Words are really important. They're how you kind of put yourself out to the world. So I think if you're interested in words in any angle, great, because words are so important in our society. We communicate through words. And I would say take yourself back to a very innocent time, because I remember, you know, when we're children, we just create these beautiful words and stories and fantastical worlds so naturally, and we've often had that drummed out of us. So I think to embrace the sacredness of word, or what needs to come through, I would say, yeah, make sure you allow yourself to go on a dream journey and let that come through, because I believe creativity is the cure to our society. I mean, I know when I wasn't being creative, I felt dead inside. I literally had a dark night of the soul, left my job, started again, and it brought life back to me.
Yes.
And I think if people are here on this summit and they're interested in word, it's because that's their creative forum. They might absolutely love to read, and you know, they're doing stuff, they're storytelling, they might just be writing like marketing copy, and they're like, the way you can make words pop in that, you know, blogs, emails, all of it, you know, the words,
just speaking to your neighbor and finding a new,
creating the story, the story. I mean, the stories that you can hear from, like, you know, people chatting and animating. I mean, my auntie was never, she was never a writer as such. She was never an actress as such, even though she did amateur dramatics, and she was never a healer, even though she she was very clairvoyant. So she was very similar to me. And when she tells a story, she's just so animated and full of all these emotions and joy and ranges, and she just lights you up that you just sit there going, oh, tell me the story. So I think, one, we should nourish the power of the stories that we tell, and, you know, bring it back to how we do communicate with each other and enliven. And, you know, I feel like saying, go and speak to somebody and find out their story, you know, like,
or their stories, because actually there are so many. We all have so many different stories, and this is fascinating, because we are so, I mean, there are so many facets to our souls. Yeah. And we cannot be contained literally in a bidimensional, you know, world, let's say.
we're kind of taught not to get to know each other, you know, like, and actually, if you sit down with someone and share stories, then it's like your souls are interlinking, and you realize that there's no difference between people, because you find yourself in one of their stories, even if you haven't lived the same life. You find the human connection. So keep sharing words, stories. And then to say about the kind of union of the masculine and feminine in this kind of creative process. I mean, I taught a course last year with spiritual writers, and it was quite simply teaching them all, like, all their practices. And I'm running it again next year from June, I think, just online, to marry those practices, because what came to me was the most important way to do your work was to because once I started to be creative, I was so in love with creativity and was so open. I would just come up with all these stories, and I lost people. They were like, it's like, it's too much. My brain was like,
yeah, they could not keep up with
it. How many dimensions are we in now? You know, and it was a beautiful process of opening up to the feminine. But then I realized, without the masculine, structuring my story, figuring out, what did I want to tell my audience? What did I want them to come away with? Who were my characters? How they lived a full life, grounded in facts and knowledge and structure. Without that, the story lost their impact. So what I ended up doing with Awaken was going through a process of, you know, dreaming and channeling and going into these soul stories and finding these words, but also, you know, research and figuring out all the techniques.
Sure. Yes.
I'd say we're so usually on one side or the other.
But actually, you know, I find that we are putting the emphasis on the feminine because for so long the masculine has been at the forefront. But actually, when the masculine is sacred again, when the masculine is stewarding or serving, you know, in a way, the expression of the feminine as well, then then everything comes together and
Yeah.
flows beautifully together. So
Yeah.
yes, totally agree with you.
And I'm going to say that the spiritual way that I do it, because I channel, if I'm writing about ancient Egypt, I'll be channeling one of the goddesses. So I was working with Isis, and it was like, don't you not work with Osiris, because he's got to hold space for you to bring this all through. So I would work with, you know, the two archetypes. So yeah, there can be a tendency, because we're rising against this patriarchy, to go, oh, we'll step into the feminine creative space. It's like, no, step back in balance.
Yes.
Because we don't want a patriarchy, we don't want a matriarchy,
We want balance, we want love.
yeah.
And I would like to, okay, just one really last question. I'm hooked up, so I could not let you go like this.
Yeah.
And I know that you're going to teach a lot in the coming month.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering whether you can share what you are going to teach, and specifically about the course about channeling your work, and also other courses you are in the works.
Yes, so I think I've had a bit of a kicking about the channeling the work, because a few platforms have been like, oh, are you offering that? And I haven't done it yet. So what I'm doing is working on the content now, and the channel your it's called Channel Your Story now, and it's to help people channel their soul stories. So it's very much for people that wanted to get a bit deeper, use things like past life regression, use meditation, use shamanic journeys fully to go into scenes, but also, as I've mentioned, to do the structural work if you don't know how to create characters and things, and also to bring in some techniques that's a bit more on your feet, improvised from the body, which is kind of acting practices to write, and then other writing techniques. So it's going to be like an 8-week course from January. So feel free to sign up on my mailing list to get details about that. And I'm also running the Order of the Black Rose, which is one of my channelings from my own soul story, which was a lineage that I've taught many lifetimes before, and it's like an initiation from the Egyptian temples. And basically what it is the original story of the Gnostics, the origin story. I think we're at a really sad place where a lot of us have lost our origin stories. We don't know who we are and where we've come from. And once I learned this about the kind of the Sophia lineage, the Mary Magdalene, the Isis, I felt like I'd come home. So I'm teaching that, even though it's quite a shadow priestess awakening path about, oh my God, how many lies have we been sold? It's also about a lineage that suddenly made me go, oh my God, I know who I am and where I've come from. And so that kicks off around Samhain, of course, in October. Yeah, of course it does. When the veil is thin, let's go in, is what they've told me. And that'll be like an online, an 8-week thing. Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, and I really urge our listeners to get in touch with you through your website and through the link that is in the page.
Yeah.
And
I should add that Awaken might be going back up on the website, my first play. So anyone that's interested in that, it might be going back up for a little while as we move into going into a full production, because it was a script and hand reading. But I've had such an amazing, powerful, beautiful response to the work. It feels like it might be out there. So.
Wonderful work. So thank you so much, Cheryl, for sharing your word power with us today. And really, it was such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.